Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Jesus reminds us to watch for the signs of his return. Today we will explore further what we are seeing in our times that line up with what signs he said would indicate the potential of the end and his return. We will also discuss the practical meaning of this as we watch and as a remnant prepare as he so leads. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, Kathy. Here we are on End Times Friday in January.
Good morning. Good to see you.
We are, Kathy and I are through our Christmas holidays, and have started taking decorations down. And we had some cool stuff happen. And one thing that happened to me yesterday that I'll share that has an impact a little bit on thinking about the end. But I was in New Hampshire with you, and
yes.
tell the audience what we all I got to experience with you, but it was amazing. So talk a little bit about what happened.
Fantastic. So Rich and Linda came out just this past weekend, and Caleb and Olivia officially got married.
Yep.
And it was a weekend of celebration, a weekend that God was just magnified at every turn, and so much fun. I think one of the pastors actually said it best when he was describing the whole weekend. And he said, this is what happens when two people who love God, who keep themselves pure before him and are truly seeking him and have hearts for him, when they get together and get married and the heavens are celebrating with us. And he said, you felt it. It was palpable in the room to feel the Spirit celebrating with us, everybody feeling joy and jubilation and laughing. It was just a time of fellowship and fun and a lot of humor and a lot of love. And, I'm biased, but it was just amazing, I think, And it was such a privilege, honestly, to have you and Linda out there. That was even a reminder. A lot of my family, Dan's family, was able to come out. A lot of my family was not. One of my sisters and her daughter were. But God reminded me, look around the room because this is your family.
Right.
And there is beauty in that when you are with other believers celebrating what God has done,
Yeah, and it felt that way.
Yeah.
Just to be together in your beautiful home, and you still had decorations up, and then
yes, we kept them up so you guys could all see them.
Yeah, and it was pretty funny because I think Kathy's described their outside decorations as spectacular, which they are, and the fact that you could even put them together like you do, it's still amazing to me. How do you? Because they have these gigantic trees at the very top. They must be 30, 40 feet high, And so,
easily, yeah.
How do you get lights up there? I don't know, but so we got there and there's no lights on.
I forgot about that.
So I had said, hey, you guys said that you have all these decorations out there. Where are they? And Dan said, well, the last 3 or 4 days, I plug them in, and within a minute or two, they short out and they're done. They go off. I can't get them on.
Yeah. So we had called an electrician, and he hadn't been able to show up yet. Yeah.
I said, well, I got to see these, and he said, okay, I'll try one more. So he goes out there, plugs them in. They worked.
And they've worked ever since, by the way.
Yeah. So I guess it was just Linda and I coming, that.
There you go.
God said, well, I've been waiting for them to see the big deal, and it was beautiful. It was magnificent, and both the front and the back. Back is more private, obviously, for your family.
Right.
But it was pretty cool, and it's all synced to music, and it was beautiful. And of course, your inside was still up too, and that was pretty. Both all the Christmas trees and decorations.
Right. I think Linda really enjoyed all the themed trees.
We had great food and great fellowship, and then a great ceremony and great party.
And this was a funny moment I'll just share with everyone. At one point, so the music that was played there, super fun for dancing to, especially if you were of the generation of Caleb and Liv.
Yeah.
A little harder for Rich and Linda, and even for Dan and I, to dance to some of the songs. And at one point, Rich comes up to me, he's like, so do you think they would take a request for a waltz or something? and so we're laughing, and no sooner did he say that then the song Dancing Queen comes on,
and that's
which
Linda's
is
song.
Linda's favorite
That's
song.
it,
I mean,
yeah.
that's like her song. So I just was cracking up. I'm like, even God just looked at that and laughed and said, watch this, Rich, I got you covered.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, and Linda's the dancing queen for sure. So, yeah, that was fun. So it was
fun to have you guys to celebrate
beautiful
with
time.
us.
And they're off on their honeymoon.
They are.
Is going to be like a month long, right?
Yeah, so they're on part one right now. They're down in Jamaica having a great time. And then they'll come home. We pick them up from the airport Monday night. They're home for a few days. We celebrate Caleb's birthday real quick. And then off they go to Europe for the next 3 weeks. But it has been fun. I think Caleb thinks we may be able to convince Liv to come on as a guest too, as long as he does most of the talking. So, but they have so many God stories from the last several months to share that are just incredible to watch how God brought together just the funniest details in the most perfect way to the apartment he has provided for them, which is just a major desire of their heart, how he lined it all up, the job that he laid out for Caleb, and just all these different little details. We have seen him in the details for them so clearly in the last few months. It's fun to watch. So I do think we're close to convincing them to come on and share it, even though Liv's a little shy about it.
That'd be great. We'd love to have him. It'd be funny. It's going to be usually when that happens, when they say I don't want to talk much, they actually wind up talking pretty well.
Right.
And one time, Linda and I, this is in the early 2000s. We were teaching a marriage class at church in Chicago. And we had just started monthly doing this, what we call date night. And we had 50 couples that came. Linda prepared the food.
Right.
For the 50.
Oh, that's a lot of food to prepare.
And we had it in we were in a big high rise down in Chicago. And there was a big room, and they had a kitchen, and so she would go and prepare all that food, and so we were going to do this. One of the topic was going to be on forgiveness, and I said I really would like you to share some of your story of your processing through what God does in forgiveness. And she says, no, do not ask me. I don't want to get up in front of people. I don't want to share. I said, okay, are you sure? Because your story is so powerful. And it so illustrates the truth. Well, I just really don't want to. Please don't ask me. Okay, so we have the dinner, start the session, and I start talking about forgiveness. And Linda stands up. Almost, you could see, it was sense that it was done, by God. Just she stands up. She literally comes over to me, pushes me out of the way, and says, "I got a story to share."
I love it.
And then she went, and then that was it. That was the teaching.
That's
was Linda
awesome.
saying, "Don't ask me to do it," and she was like, "Get out of the way. I'm here to take care of it." So it was pretty funny. As we've been talking about the end, and the end as we look at the sequence of it, is that there's a development where the world readily accepts a one world government, and that's the beginning of the tribulation. So things have to happen prior to that,
right? To
get things in place to be able to have it. And I keep asking God, talking to God about, and I can see part of it. I still don't see it all, but how does the world readily accept a single system, openly, readily, and willingly, and there's not a contention about it. There's not a fight about it. It's okay. Well, think about our two-party system in America,
right?
Which we have now a transfer of the House to the Republican majority, and when the Democrats had it, the Republicans and Democrats fought like cats and dogs. Now the Republicans have it. Guess what? They fight like cats and dogs.
They're still fighting like cats and dogs, yes.
And there's not a surrender willingness to, well, I'm gonna together work on a single, kind of leadership. It's a fight. As a matter of fact, what I see is more and more and more chaos, and more and more and more division. Like, for example,
and less ability to actually get anything done.
Just to give you an example, the Christians particularly will be amazed at this, but the Republicans just passed. They just got in power, and they just passed. This is the first thing they did. It's interesting. They passed a bill that says that if a baby is born out through a procedure of abortion, because what happens evidently is that they try to, they're trying to abort a baby who's ready to be born, which is, to me, it's murder all the way from the beginning, because our life starts at conception. But the baby is literally physically ready to be born, and they wind up trying to abort it, but a lot of them survive it. And then they kill it afterwards. Well, they passed a bill that a doctor, if you're performing an abortion and the baby's living, you have to save it. Okay.
Wow.
And so,
that's big legislation, right?
That's
there.
a big thing. Okay, so that happened. Well, as soon as they passed it, these big time opposition came and said, we are going to oppose this and come after you, because we don't want that to be true. And so it's not that's a good idea. It's, we're going to actually oppose it, and it's division. And that's the characteristic of our country. By the way, it's the way it is all over the world.
Right.
Is that the parties are in complete opposition to each other and fight, including even in Israel right now, which I'll talk about later. But so the question is, well, something has to happen for things to come together, and we kind of release those conflicts, and we say, you know what, it's better if we follow this one system now, and I'll join you in doing this, and that's the way it's going to happen, absolutely. Right. So that means things have to change. Well, I was part of something yesterday that illustrates it a little bit, and that is that I was in Birmingham, Alabama, which, by the way, you and I know is, and we've had on the broadcast. Anna, maybe, and Anna, we're going to maybe hopefully tape as another guest coming up here. But her friend Reagan goes to a university called Samford in Birmingham, Alabama.
In Birmingham, yeah. You should have stopped by to say hi.
Yeah, if I'd had time, I would. And I was there for an acquisition for our company, and it just so happened it was a mile away from Samford. So I got to see my grandson is going to be going there to visit the school as a potential for him, because he's going to be going to college here in 2 years. So it's a beautiful place. And so I'm in Birmingham, and I get a text, and I'm an early riser anyway, even though it's an hour earlier. I'm already up at 4 a.m, and I get a text that says the U.S. air system is down.
I did hear about this. Yeah.
So, so I immediately, get on my computer and start to see is that the entire U.S.
This
air
was
system,
not one airline like the Southwest crash.
No,
this was the entire thing.
They shut the entire system down because there was a software problem. And they just said everybody's grounded. So the flights that were in the air had to land. Nobody could take off.
Right.
And even
this was the first time since 9/11 that they had a nationwide shutdown of all the airlines.
That's right. And never have there been a voluntary one, because of just something that happened internally. So the whole system shut down. And I was, I'm in Birmingham, and I was coming back, home, because I was just going to be there in the morning and have an afternoon flight, and automatically it's like, I know there's going to be a problem today. Am I even going to get home? Because of what's happening. But it was a big time Universal, and we'll come back to that. But so I said, okay, Father, what do I do? Because I'm thinking, do I get a car? My son's over in Dallas. Should I drive over to Dallas? Should I, what should I do? He said, don't worry, you'll be fine. Your plane will still take off. It's going to be late. Relax. This is general adversity for you. It's not personal. Just go to peace, stay in peace. I'll take care of it. I'll get it resolved. Don't worry. Okay. And all right. I said, okay, that's good. Didn't do anything about it other than believe it. And then, we wind up getting to the airport. It takes off about an hour and a half late, but it took off. That's the good news. So I'm going to land in Denver. And I'm a partial season ticket holder for the Denver Nuggets.
Right.
And last night was a game, and it's one of my games. And they, because I'm a partial ticket holder, they had invited me to a special party with the players. And,
fun!
And the opportunity to just be around and enjoy in a private session. And so I was going to go to the game. So, but I'm already late, and I'm thinking, man, I hope I can get there in time, And so I get we land. I think I can kind of make. I'm going to be a little bit late, but I can make it. And because of the chaos of the day, our plane sat on the tarmac for an hour.
Oh no!
And I couldn't get there.
That's the most frustrating feeling, right?
So I couldn't make it, and I was just like, okay, what do I do? And God said, you just go home. So I went home. But what struck me about it was that, and this is something I'm trying to process further, is when I experienced it, as well as everybody else, there was no division at all from anybody. It was just, what do we need to do to get this resolved? And it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on or what you think.
Right.
It's just, can we fix this?
This needs to be fixed. Yeah.
And there wasn't any division. Let's just work together to get this resolved.
In fact, it was a problem that equally affected everyone involved, right?
Exactly. I think that's the issue, is that it equally, and the solution was, well, how soon can the solution be done? And is there anything that anybody can do to assist it? And you stop thinking division at all. And it's not even blaming whose fault it is. It's just, how can we get it fixed?
Right.
So I think as we, come up to the things that are going to lead to a point where there's a one world government is, and I'm going to process this further, is what are the things that have to happen so that everybody who's in chaos and division today releases that and says, you know what, it'd be better if we all follow this.
Right.
And so I think therefore it's going to be, and just like what I experienced yesterday, I think it has to come out of a problem. Something
that needs a resolution.
Very deep and needs resolution. And everybody stops worrying about blaming each other or fighting each other. It's like, we are all affected by this. And then how do we come to a solution that we all can accept? Because even into the tribulation, there is no evidence of division. And
really?
And the only group that has opposition is called the remnant. And the remnant are the ones that spiritually don't take the mark of the beast and don't join that one world system. And then the Antichrist comes after the Christians and tries to persecute them. And they're the only group that there's any opposition to. But everybody else stays in unity and has no division. So, for example, when God's wrath comes at the middle, when the abomination of desolation, when the Antichrist declares himself to be God, the angels, there's God's wrath that comes. Now they're blaming, the Antichrist blames that on Israel and Israel's God.
Right.
And if we could just eliminate Israel, we can get this fixed again.
We can get back to
and so the angels come. Surround the world, and they can be physically seen, so they know that they're supernatural, and they speak and say, "This is the real God coming against evil, and you need to repent. And if you repent, you can be saved. Okay, guess how many repent?
None, right?
None. I mean, so the unity of following evil is complete, and the only ones that don't are the remnant that we, perhaps again we think that maybe will be raptured in mid-trib, and then leaving Israel, who now is the bearer of Christianity, and they receive Christ, but they're still physically here, and the enemy is trying to eliminate them.
So it's interesting as you say that. My mind's wondering, like, typically in something like this, like even 9/11, there's a big crisis, everybody comes together, and you see that initial unity, and then once things are some kind of solution or resolution is coming into place, then you start to see the blame game go.
Yep.
And division comes back,
Right.
right? So you're saying there's not going to be this resurgence of division. Yet what I'm hearing also is probably because I think human nature and the way the enemy works, he still loves division. And so that division then comes, I'm assuming, maybe in a blame game against the remnant, against Israel. And so that's where you start to see this division where the enemy is still working there. And and I even think about going back to World War II and how Hitler was so effective at getting people to blame the Jews for things.
Right.
And that's how things transpired. And so, I don't know, my mind is going through, okay, what's that going to all look like? Because I think there will still be some division at play, but it will be simply what you're talking about, that division of God's people, his remnant, and then the rest of the world who is following the system.
Yeah, exactly. And
the blame game, I think, will certainly come in that.
Yeah, and think about what you said is that see, God keeps helping us understand things. Is that we're dealing with powers and principalities.
Right.
So think of the Jews, for example. Christ was Jewish, came into the Jewish nation. Obviously, tried to help them understand that their vision of Messiah was different than truth.
Right.
It wasn't a earthly ruler. By the way, it will be in the millennium, but it's not now. It was to bring people into a personal, intimate relationship with Christ, and to join the kingdom of God, which is spiritual. What happened, and it still was going to center on the Jewish nation, who was to be the receiver of that. And that's why Christ kept going to synagogues, by the way, and kept saying, let me teach you the truth of that.
Right.
In think of the first churches after the resurrection. Where did they go? They went to the Jewish people, interesting enough, without even considering the Gentiles. Right, and then God said, hey, by the way, it's for everybody, and so it expanded out, but it was first to be for Jewish. Okay, so God's people are still Jewish, are still the Jewish nation. So that what happened in 70 AD is they were destroyed. Solomon's second temple, that remember had been destroyed when Jeremiah with Nebuchadnezzar, it was destroyed again. And actually, I think have you been to Israel? You have, right? Or have
not
you?
Yet? Not yet. No, I want to.
Okay, well, you can go to the temple site, which, by the way, is called the Temple Mount, and where the mosque is right now. That because the Palestinians are the ones that really have that place. But if you walk along where the Temple Mount is, you'll see the blocks of the temple that were torn down in 70 AD.
Wow.
And you can see the destruction of it. And so they were destroyed and eliminated as a nation in 70 AD. And it's called the diaspora, where they had to get out. They had to disperse.
A scattering, yeah.
Yeah. And interesting enough, included in those Jews were Christians. Because remember, a lot of Christians were Jewish.
Right.
so they went into the diaspora, and Paul had already, established churches in all over the place, including in Rome, Italy. And so they went to all these different places, and they basically exploded. Interesting enough, they exploded Christianity. Okay, in 70 A.D., they ceased to exist as a nation. Well, God kept them pure for 2 centuries, for 2 millennia, sorry. And they maintained their purity as Jewish people in all these different places, including into Russia, Europe, obviously coming to America. But they were still Jewish, but they weren't a nation. Through the recovery after World War I, Jews started to come back through the British having the opportunity to protect them. And they built more and more and more people coming back to Israel, the physical land of Israel. And then they had World War II, and they had developed a strength, but spiritually, and you said it, what happened? What did Hitler do? Who did he go after?
That's who he went after. He started blaming the Jews for everything.
Yeah, I'm going to blame the Jews, and he killed 6 million people of them to try to eliminate them. Okay, why? Well, that's what Satan knows, that ultimately what's going to be in my way for ruling earth is the Jews. And so that's why they've been persecuted, and tried to be eliminated, but they actually formed up back as a nation after World War II.
Right.
And now they're thriving, by the way, as a nation. And right now, most of them are still thinking Messiah is a earthly ruler and isn't Jesus.
Right.
But there's more and more receptivity to the fact that maybe Jesus is the Messiah, and because of what Netanyahu has done, he did this a decade ago, he actually invited the Daystar network to come and broadcast 24/7.
So many of them are hearing the message.
So they're hearing Christ all over the place, and the softening is happening with them. Maybe he is the Messiah, and at time, see, there'll be a moment where the most of the nation converts, that wakes up, and basically their eyes are opened up, and it is Jesus, and they become the bearers of Christianity at the very, very end, because it's now centered in Israel.
Wow.
And guess what? Again, Satan and the demonic principalities and powers are trying to do what? Eliminate it.
They're going to try to come against them, yeah.
They try to come against
Absolutely.
it. And the division that you're talking about is going to be them. And the world is going to have a common enemy, and it's going to be not each other. It's going to be the Jews and any Christians that are left. And if we could just get rid of them, we can go back to the first 3.5 years of the tribulation, which is that great wealth building. And that's why I think,
and
by
has
the way,
the appearance of good. Yeah.
I think the economic system that is created and joined up and then is actually effective for the first 3.5 years is why there's a unifying factor. That, and I think there'll be restrictions to that. In other words, you can't even fight against this, because if you do, then we're going to, cause you trouble. And so people say, well, then why would I ever want to do that when I get blessed by it? In their mind.
Right.
So I think it's an economic unity that comes about, that our political differences and our emotional differences kind of get suppressed. And
isn't it interesting as you say that? I think about an economic unity that comes about, and in the Bible, more often than any other thing that is talked about, is how money is the biggest competitor for our hearts for God.
Yes.
And what you're saying is really, when it comes down to the end, once again, the biggest competitor for our hearts for God, and just staying to staying true to what he's saying and to following him and to not joining the system and all of that is going to be this thing of money trying to steal our hearts again.
Yeah. And by the way,
that's going to be the biggest temptation.
What does it say in in Matthew 6 verses 20 on? You cannot serve what?
Both God and money.
You can't serve God and money at the same time. And literally, the world chooses money.
But even that, I think, is prophetic towards the end.
Exactly.
There,
and the world chooses money, and completely rejects God. And of course, the Christians that are left, the remnant, if they have a heart, they choose God and reject the money because they understand something. I can't do both.
And understand His provision.
Yeah.
In the middle of it all, too.
Yeah.
So fascinating to see all the links there. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that I just experienced, I think, is you could see how it could work, and by the way, the other thing it showed me is that with the technology that we're relying on, that when they want to do something,
we're so vulnerable.
when they want to do something, that changes it. Literally, it just took a moment of something happening electronically, and the entire system came down.
Right.
And it wasn't kind of a little bit, some people, it was everybody. So we're vulnerable now to a master, in a sense, manipulation.
Right.
That I can cause massive worldwide, national, global problems by just electronic stuff. So it'll be interesting. Well, we're out of time already, so we'll pick it up again next time and talk more about the cultural issues of this. But I think it was just good to be reminded of what is going to happen and what has to happen, and be thinking about. And we'd love to have people weigh in. If you have questions, send them at questions@afjministry.com, including any comments. What do you see? What are ideas you have about how can it go from such chaos and division to a complete sense of unity? What ideas have you seen, or what thoughts do you have? So we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us today, and thanks for sharing, Rich. And again, send in your questions if you've got them, and we will have a great conversation. Take care, everybody.
Yep. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.